really honored to be back reading, so thanks for having me. Darts by Ty Mahany. For most of my life, I've held this fantasy. Shortly before my death, a person will appear with a list of things I've done in my life, and the number of times I've done them. Everything from sneezes to knee scrapes. How many times has my nose bled? How many people have caught me masturbating but elected not to let me know? What is my lifetime batting average with heavy metal Latinas? Heavy metal Jewess is not good enough for you? I want to believe that I would turn my attention first to the number of times I told a family member I loved them, or the number of charitable acts I had performed. But I know good and goddamn well I will turn immediately to the section labeled farts. This fantasy is so embedded in me that even now as I type that last part, I became far too excited at the idea of finding out the exact number of farts I've delivered. I wonder how many things would just fall under the heading stupid shit, like the number of times I've accidentally called a girl by the wrong name, or how many times I did that on purpose. How many people have I embarrassed, intentionally or otherwise? How many times have I compared pooping to childbirth? How many times have I thought or said, I probably shouldn't do this, followed by doing that exact same thing? How many times have I attempted to kill another human being? Well, actually, I know the answer to that. It's once. Let me explain. Do you remember the first day of high school? The excitement, the wonder, the anticipation of meeting new people and learning new things? Yeah? Well, I had none of that. All I had was the fear. It was a big, rough school, and I was a tiny, soft person. I was 4'11" and 85 pounds of nervous white boy, and nothing about the walk up to that giant brick edifice was less than terrifying. I suppose there was a bit of hope somewhere in my head, but it ebbed away the moment I walked through the door and was met with a dissonant chorus of insulting comments aimed at my stature and complexion. Any hope disappeared completely about a half hour later, when I was stabbed. I always say the word stabbed, although technically I was just stabbed at. I managed to move in time that the knife just cut me, rather than enter my stomach as was intended, but this seems like a minor semantic quibble in light of the circumstances. It was dumb, in hindsight. There are a group of guys that wanted to take my stuff, and I should have just given it to them. The only thing of value was a $30 blank check meant for the yearbook. The yearbook was not something I particularly wanted anyway, especially now that it seemed like my high school experience might be less than golden. I refused to part with my peachy folders, which infuriated the main asshole trying to take them. He pushed and punched, and eventually he produced the knife and thrust it at me. I didn't feel the pain as intensely as I should have due to the adrenaline, but it was enough for my brain to scream, "Give him the stupid folders, asshole!" which I promptly did. A security guard arrived and broke up the scuffle. He asked if I was okay. I didn't say anything, I just left. I thought if I talked, I would start crying, and that was not something I wanted to add to my reputation resume at that point. I walked across the street to the bowling alley and went into the bathroom to assess my wound. There were 2 cuts, forming a small X in my side. I cleaned it as best I could and wrapped paper towels around my midsection. I then wandered around for hours until I could go home, pretending as though I had spent the day in school. I didn't tell anyone what had happened. I kept thinking of that Matt Dillon movie, Over the Edge. There's a line in that movie that goes, "Any kid that tells on another kid is a dead kid." It was something I chose to believe, mostly because I was a stupid kid. When I got home, I filled the cuts with super glue and pretended like nothing happened. Against every instinct, I went back to the school. Honestly, what choice did I have? I couldn't really tell my parents that the whole school thing just wasn't working out for me and maybe I could apprentice at the local blacksmith. So I went, and while there was still a lot of verbal abuse, the physical altercations were not as frequent as I thought they would be. I would see the kid that cut me from time to time. He would smile and nod at me in a way that let me know he wouldn't mind getting another shot. I hated him with the intensity of a Fox News anchor discussing immigration. And much like that news anchor, my rage was impotent. There was nothing I could do. He was way bigger than me and seemed to be related, by blood, to a large percentage of the school. A couple months later, while I was walking home, I saw him and some of his buddies walking ahead of me. I followed at a distance, hiding every now and then. One of the advantages to being small was that the world provided way more places to hide. Even fire hydrants or the random third grader would do the trick. After a few blocks, he split from the group and walked into his house. Now, I knew where he lived. I don't know why, but at that exact moment, I began to plot his demise. I thought about this intensely for a few weeks, trying to decide what I was going to do. It filled a large percentage of my waking moments. I was a giant fuck you to everyone who said I wasn't motivated. My fantasies were ridiculous in this regard. I remember one in particular involved a barbed wire noose. Yeah, I know that's fucked up, but I was scared and angry, and I probably had a hormone situation going on. In any case, I did not have a barbed wire noose. What I did have were two things. A blowgun my uncle gave me for Christmas, and the Anarchist Cookbook. How the latter came into my possession, I don't know. I think it just appears in the life of boys with a certain mentality somewhere around their 14th birthday. Regardless, I now had a plan. I was going to kill this guy with a poison blow dart. How fucking romantic is that? I ended up mixing 3 or 4 different poisons together using different chemicals around the house, using recipes from the book. None were exact, of course, because I didn't have everything I needed to make even one. It's like when one of your goth friends is trying to do a spell, but they don't have access to eyes or toes, so they just throw in some peas. I made do with what I had, and on a random Wednesday, I hid myself about 4 houses down from his in a hedge, wearing a camo shirt and a pair of green corduroy pants I had left over from Catholic school. Obviously, the Catholicism didn't take, because I was about to break the shit out of the 5th commandment. I waited about 15 minutes until I saw him pull up in his crappy Falcon and get out of the car. I only brought 1 dart, and only had a few seconds to do what I came to do. I put the gun to my lips, aimed at his neck, and didn't even have time to think, I probably shouldn't do this, before I filled my lungs and puffed the dart into the air. I watched the orange stabilizer of the dart fly toward him in slow motion. As it came down, I realized that I probably should have aimed higher. He turned towards his front door just as the dart hit him in his ass. Him turning probably saved me, because when it hit him, he immediately swatted it out of his ass and started looking around. He looked in the wrong direction to see where it came from. He started yelling out his friends' names and a bunch of Spanish cuss words. He was looking across the street instead of down the block, where I was hidden in the foliage, giggling my ass off. He ran into his house and I ran away. I got home without incident and just imagine the poison coursing through his veins, shutting down organ after organ until he hit the ground as a former bully. I didn't sleep that night, and the next day at school, my nemesis was nowhere to be found. I wish I could say that during the day I had pangs of remorse, just a hint of the guilt installed by the nuns. But there was none. I killed a guy, and I was happy about it. Of course, he showed up on Friday looking none the worse for wear. It never occurred to me that he had just cut school like he did about 3 times a week anyway. I was disappointed, to say the least. I didn't make any new plans. He continued to fuck with me until he dropped out of school, and I never saw him again. It did dawn on me at some point just how dumb the plan was. South American tribes using poison darts make their darts out of wood so that the poison sinks in. I had a metal dart, and whatever tiny bit of my bullshit concoction was left on it most assuredly passed off as it wiped through his jeep. I like to rationalize that I probably realized this subconsciously, that it didn't really want to kill him. But that's not true. It's been 30 years since this happened, and there are times, late at night, that I still wish he was dead. I probably shouldn't do that. Thank you.